Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's online Fiction at the Friary. I'm Danielle McLaughlin, and I'm here with my co-host Madeleine Darcy and this month's featured author Cathy Sweeney. As some of you will be aware, before the pandemic, we used to meet up in the Friary Bar on the North Mall in Cork on the last Sunday of every month between 3 and 6 p.m. And we're hoping that perhaps we'll be back in the Friary Bar again before too long more. But in the meantime, we're continuing as a virtual event. We'll have some details at the end of our event today on how you can take part in our free book raffle. And we'll have details on our Twitter feed and on our Facebook page about that as well. Before we begin, I'd just like to briefly thank our sponsors, who this year are the Arts Council, Cork City Council, Cork City Libraries, the Department of English, UCC, Hogan Architects, J. Rapplemar Solicitors, and Mike Darcy of the Friary Bar, who has been such a great support to us since we started Fiction at the Friary. So now I'm going to hand over to Madeleine, who will introduce our guest writer.
Thank you, Danielle. My name is Madeleine Darcy, and I'm delighted to introduce our guest author this month. Cathy Sweeney is a writer who lives in Dublin. Her short fiction has been published in The Stinging Fly, The Dublin Review, Egress, Winter Papers, Banshee, The Tangerine, and Granta, and has been broadcast on BBC Radio 4. Her debut collection of short fiction, Modern Times, there we go, beautiful cover, was published in 2020 by Stinging Fly Press and in the UK by Wiedenfield and Nicholson. And this book has been shortlisted for the John McGahern Annual Book Prize this year. So congratulations to Cathy for that. A review in The Guardian described Modern Times as a breathtakingly weird book, jammed full of peculiar characters and strange scenarios, and says that Cathy's writing is direct, no holds barred. Her sentences are taut as strings. And in addition, I love this because it's a great description, I think, of Modern Times. Reading this book in a single sitting feels a bit like getting giddy from eating too many Easter eggs. So Moorish is each one of these stories. Modern Times announces the arrival of an unforgettable new voice in Irish fiction. So we're delighted to welcome you, Cathy, and thank you so much for agreeing to be our guest author. We're hoping that you might read something from Modern Times for us just to kick off our afternoon.
Thank you very much, Madeleine, for such a lovely introduction, and thank you very much to both of you, Madeleine and Danielle, for inviting me to Fiction in the Friary on Zoom. I'm delighted to chat. This story from Modern Times is called Oranges, and I'll give it a go. I haven't read it before, so I don't know what it reads like, but here we go. 1. The orange was at the bottom of the fruit bowl. It was lying underneath 2 bananas and 3 apples. That is probably why it began to rot. The darkness at the bottom of the bowl and the heat. 2. It was my wife who ate oranges. For breakfast every morning she had an orange, then a bowl of cereal, then a mug of coffee. She cut the orange in quarters, then sucked each segment before removing it from the skin with her teeth. 3. My wife had gone away to stay with her parents in the countryside for 2 weeks, taking the baby with her, but leaving the orange behind in the fruit bowl, and me, alone in the apartment in the heat. 4. My wife and I had argued about me staying in the apartment while she went to the countryside with the baby. She said there was no way she was spending 2 weeks on her own with her parents and the baby. Then I said, okay, we'll all go to the countryside to get out of the heat. Then she said, we need a better apartment, so that it is not so hot, maybe with a garden, so that the baby wouldn't be cooped up. Then I said, it was hard to work with a baby in a cooped up apartment. and it was work that brought in money. And that is how I got to stay alone in the apartment for 2 weeks. 5. For 3 days, I watched TV in my underwear, ate pizza, drank cold beers, watched porn on my laptop, masturbated, and took the dog out for a walk so late that there was no one to see me not picking up after him. I left the blinds down on the windows and spoke only when my wife phoned to ask how the work was going. I said it was going fine. 6. It was on day 4 that I noticed the orange was rotting. Underneath the smell of pizza and beer and semen, there was some other smell, a sweet, rusty odor, like death, if death was a confectionery. I lifted the 2 bananas and 3 apples out of the fruit bowl and saw the orange sagging and fuzzed over in grey. 7. I left the orange where it was and ate the 2 bananas and 3 apples. I was tired of pizza. I tried to watch TV, but there was nothing on, and I'd sworn off porn due to my rapid descent into extremes. 8. On the morning of day 5, I woke early. The sheet had mangled itself around my torso and my mouth felt like it was full of flies. I got up and showered and drove out the motorway to the supermarket. Inside the supermarket, everything was cool and quiet, and the trolley glided through the aisles while I stared at products like they were objects from a dream I could no longer remember. Nappies and detergent and bumper bags of dog food. 9. In the fruit and vegetable department, an entire bay was full of oranges, tangerines from Peru, mandarins from South Africa, satsumas, breakfast oranges from Valencia, common oranges from Spain, blood oranges, seedless oranges, oranges with their leaves still attached, bargain oranges, their skin a bit mottled looking. So many oranges, I was amazed. 10. I bought about 40 oranges. It was a lot. My thinking went something like this: I don't eat oranges, my wife eats oranges. This is my chance to eat oranges, to see if I like them. Maybe I like them. I bought about 40 oranges because I wanted to taste each variety, and some oranges were only sold grouped in nets or cellophane bags. 11. I cannot explain why, but when I got back to the apartment, instead of putting the oranges in a bowl or in the fridge, I filled the kitchen sink with them and let the rest spill out over the draining board and worktop. They looked nice. My wife phoned. I said the work was going well, much better, that I had a breakthrough. My wife said she missed me and put the baby on the phone. I could hear it gurgle. 12. The next day, I went back to the supermarket and filled the trolley with oranges, loaded up the boot of the car with bags of them, went back inside the supermarket, filled the trolley with oranges again, loaded up the back seat of the car with more oranges, and put the last bag of oranges on the passenger seat. The woman on the till remarked that I was buying a lot of oranges. I said I ran a small business making orange juice and that my supplier had let me down. 13. When I got back to the apartment, I put oranges in the bath, in the sink, in the bathroom, on the kitchen table, on the chairs, on the bookshelves, on the TV stand, on the coffee table, on the dressing table in the bedroom, and in the baby's cot. Then I went back to the supermarket and bought one more half trolley of oranges. There were 2 reasons for only buying one more half trolley. 1, the supermarket had a greatly reduced stock of oranges. 2, my wife analyzes the statement for our joint Visa account in the same way that scientists analyze microbes in a lab. So I was using my own card to pay for the oranges, and it was almost maxed. 14. I arranged the last of the oranges in various spots around the apartment, in the washing machine, under the bed, along the wainscoting in the hallway. Wherever oranges fell, I just left them there. The only place I purposefully did not put an orange was in the fruit bowl. I wanted to leave the single rotting orange to die in peace. 15. After all this activity with the oranges, I slept for 2 days, only waking to talk to my wife on the phone or to walk the dog. My wife said the baby missed me. She said that the baby was unsettled when she was put down to sleep at night, as though she was waiting for me to say the Dr. Seuss poem. I always said the Dr. Seuss poem to the baby at night. I was lying in bed when my wife said this, and I could see the baby's cot in the far corner of the room. It was full of oranges. It was day 8. 16. I dreamed that all the oranges in the apartment turned into lotus flowers. But when I bent to smell them, there was dog mess in the petals. 17. The dog is acting strange. When my wife phones, I tell her that the dog is acting strange and she says to put the dog on the phone. I put the receiver to the dog's ear and I can hear my wife saying things like, "Good boy," and "Mummy will be home soon." The dog starts to bark. I feel guilty about the dog, and that evening I take it for a long walk. I bring baggies with me to clean up the mess. 18. The apartment has started to smell. At first, the oranges had no scent at all, except for the one in the fruit bowl that now looks like a small, misshapen rat. The smell is bitter and clean. The air feels like it did when I was a child and went back to school in autumn and opened the first page of a new copybook. 19. I read somewhere that there are 5 things people cannot smell if they are dying: peppermint, leather, rose petals, fish, and oranges. I am not dying. It is day 11 and my wife will be home soon. On the phone in the evening with the blinds pulled up to let in the last of the sun, I tell my wife I miss her and to give the baby a kiss for me. Neither of us mention work or money or moving to a bigger apartment. 20. The oranges have started to rot. Their decay is taking place at a much faster rate than I expected, much faster than that of the orange in the fruit bowl, which now looks like the tongue of an old person. It must be because they are all touching against each other, each orange affected by the orange beside it, either all fresh or all rotting. The smell is sour but not unpleasant, like soil from a grave, not the grave of a child or of a person killed in a terrible accident, but of a person who lived a long time and was ready to die. 21. It is nearly time to clear away all the oranges. Some of the surfaces in the kitchen and the bathroom will have to be scrubbed with sugar soap, and a few items like the mattress in the baby's cot will have to be replaced. I am making a list so that when I drive to the retail park, I'll get everything I need: gloves and large black plastic sacks, maybe a small shovel. 22. It is day 13. My wife phones to tell me what train she is coming home on. She will be home the day after tomorrow with the baby. They are staying an extra night in the countryside because train tickets are cheaper on weekdays. I write the time of the train's arrival on the margin in the calendar in the kitchen. We both go quiet on the phone, but we don't hang up. I can hear the baby making noises in the background. 23. I sit on the couch, but I don't turn the TV on. I just listen to the darkness. The smell of fermenting oranges in the apartment is powerful, but I've gotten used to it. Everything is ready to clear them all out in the morning, even the one in the fruit bowl. It strikes me that I never tasted any of them. I don't think I like oranges. The phone rings, but I let it ring. My wife leaves a message reminding me about the arrival time of the train. 24. I stay sitting in the darkness for hours. The dog shuffles in from the hallway and slumps at my feet. He is tired from a long walk earlier in the day. The air seems cooler. I sit there doing nothing, but I feel different. Like I am alive, now, in this moment. Like if I peeled my skin off and left it beside me on the couch watching TV, I would still be real. Thank you. Got through it.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That is magnificently and gloriously strange, like the rest of the collection. I love it.
Thank you, Danielle.
So these are Irish short stories, and at the same time, they're totally unlike anything I would have encountered growing up within the canon of the Irish short story. So I'm interested as to whether you were aware that you were writing into new territory with these stories.
I suppose what happened is when I was growing up, and I loved reading and English and went to study English and taught English. It never occurred to me to write, and I think that's because you can love something, and I absolutely loved everything about the Irish canon, but you don't feel it. You're in it. You're part of it. It's kind of like it's gorgeous. It's but it's like art on the wall. And I think that when I started reading different kind of stories, that something just went like, something just went off, like exploded in me. And I felt a great affinity, and I thought that I could just maybe start trying to write. And yeah, that's kind of just what happened. I went to the Irish Writers Centre and did some writing courses, and I was very lucky to have Greg Baxter as a teacher, and we did a lot of short stories in translation, particularly Russian short stories, and read all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. And some of my stories are, you know, quite realistic. Some of them are more fanciful. I suppose I like the sort of tension between the two, where it's kind of like hyper real but like totally not real at the same time. And it's just that thing, Danielle, I'm sure you understand it, and Madeline, as writers, that you just, something goes off in your chest, you know, it's like, that's my voice, that's I don't know what it is, but I want to say it.
I love how in the story that you read for us there, that there's this very nice tinge of apocalypse in a domestic setting, and it's all built around these oranges. And I'm intrigued by these oranges, and I'm wondering where the idea for that story started.
It's incredibly banal. It's incredibly banal. I had finished a year's work and was extremely tired as a teacher is come you know, the end of May. And instead of taking, you know, a week or two to just like sleep and read, and I you know, I jaunted off on a city break and hated it. I just had a horrible time, and I couldn't wait to get home because I had no internal energy. And when I got home, I went shopping, and I literally sort of like ground to a halt in front of a whole load of oranges. And I didn't know what it was, but I got home, and a little bit of sun was coming out, and I suddenly felt happy. You know, the way you feel happy for no reason at all. And I pulled a chair out, and it was the 1st of June, and the whole of summer was in front of me. But I'd had this experience of like going on a holiday and being quite depressed and wanting to stay in the hotel room instead of visit churches. And I felt so happy. And I think it was the mixture of those two things. It just started coming pretty much. I don't think I had to do a huge amount more work, and it just started coming. And in what happens to me sometimes in a male voice, you know, of just a sort of a weird contemplation of mortality. And I think there's something, like, to me, afterwards it's easy to look at a story and think, oh, maybe it's that. But I do think that one of the most shocking things about a newborn baby is the fact that it will also ultimately grow up and face mortality. Like, it's a shock you never quite get over. So I think that this guy is having a kind of, you know, a crisis, and it all plays out with the oranges, and then I imagine they live happily ever after.
I like that sense of hope that you have for them at the end. And yeah, it's really interesting the way that at the end, I feel that character, he's embracing something, I think, really, even though there's this very strange situation of all the oranges. The opening story in the collection is a story called A Love Story, and right from its opening sentence, it subverts the reader's expectations as to what a love story might be from its opening line, which is, "There was once a woman who loved her husband's cock so much that she began taking it to work in her lunchbox." And wow, what an opening line. I want to ask you, first of all, where did that opening line come from? And also, is that something that you like to do to subvert a reader's expectations about a story?
I can't say that I remember exactly where the line came from, but I do remember that at the time I wrote it, it was a series of very, very much like crazy little stories that all went together. I think I called them Tales of Our Time. I did have a fascination with lunchboxes because I found it so hard, so incredibly hard to just like get up in the morning, you know, put on some makeup, get my clothes on. And at that time, I think, try and get two extremely reluctant children out to school. I mean, it was almost like every morning was, you know, like if I got to work, I just thought, this is incredible. Like, is no one giving me a medal for just like being here? And then I'd go to the staff room, and women who also had like very, very busy lives, busier than mine, had these lunches and lunch boxes, like salads and, you know, fancy things. And I was like, how do you do it? And it just fascinated me. When I had, I'd be lucky I had a Twix and, you know, black coffee, and I'd be staring at these lunch boxes and thinking about that level of organization. And I suppose something in me just, when the line, I mean, something like that is just written in as a one sitting, that it just was, I suppose, how kind of juxtaposed, you know, the idea of like a cock and how much you could just love someone so much, and my fascination with the extraordinary level of skill and artistry that women can put into lunchboxes, that I'm still not over.
To talk for a minute about form, because there's a number of the stories in the collection that experiment with form. For example, there's one of the stories has, I think, 17 chapters, and it's still a short story, and one of those chapters is just a few words long. So are you interested in challenging the ways in which we tell stories?
Yes, I don't think it's just for the sake of it, but I you know, like all writers, and you understand exactly what I'm saying here. There's a moment when a form meets the subject, and you know, there's a sort of a beautiful little synergy happens. So it's more of an extraordinary curiosity about form, and I'm totally open, you know, totally open. But I'm not going around like hunting them down. But if it happened, like that was a story that didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work. It wasn't me who did that, actually, Danielle. It was my partner actually did the chapters, and he did say to me at the time, that's the nearest you're ever going to get to writing a novel. So I think I originally had it called like I think it's The Death of Actaeon, and I had a novel, and I thought, no, that's a little bit cheeky, but you know, that it was, I could, you know, those stories that you're sort of in love with yourself, but no one else sees it, and you can't get it to work. And then when it all chopped up into chapters, it seemed to be, oh, that's it, that's what I'm trying to get. Like some stories come straight away, and others, oh, you know, everyone has them stuck at the back of their computer someday that they can't bear to delete, because they know that deep down there's something fabulous there, but you just can't find it. So sometimes they don't, it doesn't always come at the same time, the form and the content. And that was a case where I had the story for about 2 years, and then the form made the story come alive.
Maybe you do another little reading for us.
I'd love to. I have this little one here, The Chair. Yeah. Another very sweet little story. Okay, here we go. The chair. We take it in turns now. First, I sit in the chair, and my husband administers the shocks. And then, a week or so later, I administer the shocks, and my husband sits in the chair. Other couples have their own way of doing things, but this is what suits us. When it is my turn to sit in the chair, I am almost relieved. In the days leading up to it, I become irritable, angry, even on occasion experiencing violent ideations. Often during this period, I think of leaving my husband, of breaking everything. But when the time comes to sit in the chair, I do so without protestation. A sensation of release, an expanse overtakes me, as though I am swimming effortlessly in a vast blue ocean, obeying laws of nature that are larger than me, larger than the universe. It is a different story when it is my turn to administer the shocks to my husband. In the days leading up to that, I am filled with intense feelings of tenderness for him, or not so much for him as for the idea of husband. He becomes alive to me in a way that usually only happens when a person has died. Often during this period, I find myself kissing my husband's forehead and the tips of his fingers, and when I leave the house, wearing a vest of his under my clothes. But when the time comes to administer the shocks, a red hot fire erupts in me, flowing through me like lava and annihilating any feelings of tenderness. Afterwards, I am calm, even, dare I say it, content. In between times, my husband and I do all the usual things: divide the chores, go to work, come home from work, divide the childcare, go to see a movie, order pizza on Friday nights, plan holidays, talk about finance and going to the gym more often. Time running always that bit faster than we would like. But our marriage wasn't always so easy. In the early years, it was mostly me sitting in the chair and my husband administering the shocks. And then after the babies were born, it was mostly my husband in the chair and me administering the shocks. It takes time to establish a pattern that works for both people in a relationship. I had heard of couples abandoning the chair completely. It's all the rage in some circles. Live and let live, I say, but I cannot imagine a marriage working without the chair. I mean, where would the anger go? How would you both remember week to week, day to day, what love is? Whenever things reach a low point, perhaps my husband has forgotten to do the dishes, or I have been fantasizing about having sex with a colleague. I think about one time a few years ago when my husband was in the chair. I had just administered the last shock and was about to untie the restraints when I noticed the thinnest trickle of blood coming from his ear. Things like that aren't meant to happen, of course, but nothing is perfect, not even the chair. With my finger, I traced the thin line of blood from ear to jawline, and then, absently, put my finger in my mouth and tasted all the beauty and pain of the world that has ever existed, from beginning to end, in one burst of metallic cherries. You don't forget a thing like that.
I adore that story. Thank you. Did I read somewhere that you wrote that story on the dart?
I did. I have no idea what state of mind I was in. I must have been a bit annoyed about something, but I did write it on the dart. Now I had to touch it up later, but that doesn't happen very often. But it just happened with that one. I got the first line. I thought, if I don't get the pen out and if I don't get it to paper, it'll be gone. I don't have a great memory.
I'm quite amused at the thought of Cathy researching her work, because obviously I'm presuming that sitting in an electric chair isn't a possibility. But I loved the oranges, and I wondered, Cathy, did you actually time some oranges to see how long it took before one turned into, quote, the tongue of an old person?
I don't think I went that far, but I did like stand in the supermarket and like take the notebook out of my bag and write down like all the places that oranges come from, you know, the different types there are, to try and get that as accurately as I could. And I think it was luckily enough to be Marks and Spencer's Black Rock, which has quite a nice selection of fruit. Sometimes the research thing, as you both I presume everybody like feels some similarities with writing. Research is a funny thing. A bit of it is great, and then you know the rest of the time that you're just prevaricating. So I can go down research, like, you know, like research. So sometimes what I like is like a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and to just like go with that and try not to over research, because it is I love learning, so I could spend all day, but I like to know just enough that I'm probably wrong and run with that.
The perfect answer, because too much research can send you down rabbit holes, obviously.
Yeah.
And in your work, you know, you can take some liberties, obviously, with people turning blue and all sorts of interesting things. But could I ask you about, first of all, how you decided on the title of the collection, which actually is brilliant. It's Modern Times somehow weirdly encapsulates it. And also the titles of the stories themselves are often very simple. And I'm wondering if you have had any trouble with deciding on titles for the individual stories as well, or even if perhaps in some cases, for example, the death of Actaeon, perhaps the title suggested the story rather than the other way around.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Madeline. I think there's one or two stories, maybe more actually, like a 3 or 4 that were suggested very, very strongly by either a piece of artwork, and Daniel, you know how stimulating that is, or something I just read. Like, I remember I was reading Ovid and I was obsessed with transformation when I wrote the, extremely crazy theory of forms. So yeah, sometimes it works that way. Generally, I didn't have any problems with story titles. I tend to go for the most obvious one. I don't really, it tends to be what it is. I had no idea for a collection, none at all. But I was really, really lucky because it was Declan Mead who was the person who was going to put a collection together, and he did 2 things. He gave me the sequence of stories and picked the stories, and so Declan is to blame for it starting with Cock in a Lunchbox, and he came up with Modern Times. Now the minute Declan is Danielle has been published by Declan. He's such a fantastic guy. The minute I got the email, because he's not at all, he would never press anything on you. He's extremely, gentle. But the minute I got the email saying, what about Modern Times, I knew it was the title. Like, there wasn't, I didn't have to go around the house going, Modern Times. I was like, oh my God, that is the title of my book. That is it. He just found it, So I wouldn't be any good at, I think I'd be okay for naming stories because I tend to go with just the obvious one, more or less, but I'd no idea for a collection. So I'm very grateful to Declan for that, because I really do like the title of the collection. Yeah.
So suggestive in so many ways, particularly because some of the stories have got an almost fable type quality to them, and great title. I'm also wondering, Cathy, how has your writing practice fared during lockdown, and what are you working on, and can you tell us anything about it?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it. This was a little bit unusual for me because I was teaching for years and years and years, and I just had kind of come out of teaching, sort of at the tail end of 2019, and I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm gonna not teach for a bit. And I was thinking, first of all, I was thinking a few months, and then I was thinking, a year. I'll take a year. And then the pandemic happened. So I don't really have any, it didn't happen straight away, but it happened within I had a couple of months of this is great, just going around cafes and having coffees and, going to libraries and thinking, oh, I like this. So I don't really have I don't have really any understanding that much of spending, a long time writing. I wrote the stories of Modern Times over a period of 10 years while I was always teaching. And I'd have the summer holidays, but anyone who's a teacher knows that, you tend to spend a lot of the time in summer holidays just sitting around reading. I was never very productive. So it's been an interesting one. I am writing a novel. I did have an idea for a novel when I finished teaching. That's what I thought I would do. But it's been very kind of stop-start. I think I'm lucky. Sorry, I'm rambling with this one. I think I'm lucky because I think that if I hadn't had a particular project already, sort of sketched in, and if I hadn't already decided that I was going to take this time, I think it would have been really impossible to write. But I had something concrete, something scaffolded, something definite to kind of fall back on at difficult stages during the last year or so. And it's gotten better, from being extraordinarily lazy. I turned into a teenager, just reading and I'd write one sentence and then I'd watch something on Netflix. to actually, you know, starting to say, right, okay, the novel is not actually going to write itself like that. I'm developed, I think, what I would call a practice now, which is basically, as a friend said to me, like bum on seat, like that is it, and you're not moving, you know. So I get up and I go straight to it. I'm better in the mornings, and I try and stay as long as I can. I'm not writing all the time. A lot of the time I'm, you know, chewing the end of a pencil, but it does feel like a practice. And I do that as many mornings as I can. Yeah, as many within the, you know, the confines of life and things you have to do. Yeah, so it's going okay. I'm writing a road trip, which has been great because I haven't been able to get on the road. And yeah, I'm still, the novel is, I feel, you know, it's a little bit like what we talked about. It's a little bit, I feel I'm sort of like rubbing away, and I'm starting to see it a little bit clearer all the time. But I have about another 6 months to finish it for the kind of hand-in date. And I'd be a bit weirdly strict in terms of like, either I've done it by then or I'm not going to do it. I couldn't be doing it for any longer than that, because I'd be bored, and I'm not bored yet. And I find that I look forward to getting up in the morning, and like, as long as, you know, as long as that goes on, it'll you know, that's fine. But I couldn't spend another year or two at it. I'd go like absolutely mad. So yeah, the fact that the clock is counting down on it is helping to keep me focused. But it's like, I'm definitely not marrying this novel. It's definitely like we're just having like an affair. There's 6 more months in it, and that's it then.
That sounds wonderful, and it's probably the right way to approach.
Oh, I've no idea, none.
Well, there's no right way for any writer. I don't think there are any right ways for anybody. I often think that writing is like having a baby. You know, nobody can tell you how it's going to be, you know, and you could be really fit and think you're going to whiz through this thing and the baby will pop out and it's the exact opposite, or you could have a completely different experience. And similarly with writing, I think it's, you know, it's totally dependent on the person, and everyone's work is different as well. And some people like to work in the morning, and some people like to work in the evening or the afternoon, and some people like working in bursts and then you know, give up for a few months.
I completely agree. And I mean, even more kind of crazy than that, like you have days when you're like, this is going so well, I'm on top of it, I can see it, I've done my, you know, and then the next day it's gone. Someone stole your novel, you know. So it's, for me, it's like it's not even that I'm one type of writer or another. Like, the type of writer I am is changeable, you know, from day to day. So a lot of my issues are around confidence, and big confidence issues in terms of just staying, you know, staying with it. I want to run away. Like, it's much easier to write short stories in terms of, like, I always just was playing. I was never writing for a collection, or, you know, just playing and trying to get better. But yeah, yeah, like, it's, I don't know. I have certainly found that like, I've had to, like, say, okay, Doubt, like, you're my friend now, I love you, you know, sit up beside me, because it's so, the doubt is so frightening, that if I don't sort of befriend it and let it all the way into me, like a big wave wash over me, I'm still here. I would get a, you know, find another way to, you know, to fill my time. So like, just, yeah, confidence and sitting in doubt, and trying to discover what a practice is, and so on. So it's, yeah, it hasn't come naturally to me, and I've never seen myself as a writer. You know, I still don't. I see myself as somebody who writes, but not a writer.
It's interesting, isn't it, Cathy, that a lot of people might assume that older women would somehow have acquired more confidence in themselves when they, as all three of us, have started writing later in life. But that's, funnily enough, not the case, is it?
The only thing that's working for me is to say, I'm not afraid of you, Doubt, you know, like, you're okay. and I suppose what I fear most is my own fear, that I would be looking left and right and trying to, trying to write that something that someone might like, or, I think that women, and I'm terrified of generalizing, because like we're all completely different people, but certainly I do think that I would have ingested that it's part of, femalehood to be likable, to be good, to do the right things, and that's not why I started writing. Because the rest of my life maybe I've done that. As I always said, writing's one thing there's no compromise here. So I'm like, the doubt and fear are I might write something, but it's not what I wanted to write. That's nearly more frightening. I was reading Patricia Highsmith. I want a strong whiskey or something in your hand. I was reading Edith's diary. It's like, she just so dark. And then I was reading Muriel Spark, who I find a very strange writer indeed. But I can see, I'm just trying to channel them, just their energy. And I was very, very taken with some of the things that they say. And Muriel Spark, that she didn't want to be timid. And I think that I found actually having a book published very frightening, because, well, it's there and people can read it. And I think that you're afraid then of just getting a little bit shy in when you pick up the pen, so I have to be happy to fail, and also happy to be not liked, because it's not very nice what I write, it's not very lovely. I mean, it's not. So I think it's funny, but that's my sense of humor. But it's just yeah, I think it's there is the kind of, I don't feel that I'm somebody who's a writer, who has a practice, who knows what they're doing, and I don't have that. I have the demons that I try and make my friends.
I'm reminded of that wonderful opening sentence to your story, the woman whose child was a very old man. What you said there about women and likability reminded me of it, and I'm going to read the opening sentence of that because it's wonderful. This story is set back in the days when women who painted pictures or wrote books or danced on stage weren't expected to be pleasant. And I just love that sentence. And yeah, it resonates with me so much, this idea that, the writing somehow isn't enough and we're expected to be all these other likable things as well.
I'm glad you like that one. It's a little bit mischievous, all right, definitely. And it's not that somebody mightn't be a lovely person. Maybe they are, but they shouldn't have to be.
Exactly.
They shouldn't have to be anything, because it should just be the writing. So, and I think that that's probably, like, underneath everything, it's about a principle, of just who cares what people are like, it's just you just got to work, kind of thing. And I think there's just so much more of it for women than there is for men.
Can I just ask one more question? And because I'd love to hear you talk about the influence of fairy tales and fable in your stories, and whether that's something that's going to follow through into the novel that you're writing as well. If you could just talk a little bit about that. Sure.
I suppose it's quite it is quite a natural way for me to think about things. I think the kind of intersection of reality and fantasy is a fascinating zone, and I actually love myself when you've got something that's hyper real, and also not real at all, because that's just moving, that moment of waking from a dream. I just love that space when something is so clear and then it's gone, or it feels so true but we can't explain it. I like those moments, and I think I've always loved fairy stories, and I've always loved stories that come in a form, you know, a sort of a, like once upon a time, and that have a rhythm and that have a set piece to them. And I think that goes back to you know, kind of oral storytelling and various different ways of going about it. But certainly Russian short stories in translation, that really took the lid off it for me, that you could do that you could be both hyper real, like in Blue. What I liked about that, and there's some things we all like about our stories, was that this woman is turning blue, you know, but she still buys her underwear in Marks and Spencer's, you know. So I really like the kind of interplay between that, because I think there's something there that we plug into as in our psyches, the part of ourselves we know but we don't know. And that's the like, I like a story that feels very real, but you don't know why.
I also really like the stories where the authorial voice comes in now and again and says something pithy and cynical. And I wonder if that just came naturally in the writing of those stories, Cathy, or was it a decision that you made now and again?
There isn't really anything I write that I've kind of pre-thought about, but certainly, like, I love old-fashioned stuff. I mean, I love like George Eliot, and now, dear reader, that is the lesson that we are to take from this. I've always liked authorial intrusion quite a lot, and I like feeling when I'm reading something. Also, like, I was rereading Notes from Underground, Dostoevsky, and I like that sense of like somebody's talking directly to me. I like that a lot. So it just would happen a little bit that way, a direct connection. But sometimes I have to say that, you know, if writing is a zone of play, it's certainly been very playful for me in a truly release way to have narrators that are so much bolder, brassier, ruder, ballsier, you know, and more authoritative than I am. I mean, you know, I wish they would write the novel. So it's a, you know, there's a release in letting out, you know, voices. Yeah.
And there's such strong voices, and also, you know, such clear taught sentences, and very entertaining and weirdly wonderful stories. So thank you so much, Cathy, and it's a great book.
Well, thank you both very, very much. It's been a delight. I look forward to coming down to Cork and just having the chats in the Friary one Sunday. When you've some other guest, I look forward to just, you know, traveling and actually meeting you.
Oh, well, we would love to have you down in Cork, and yeah, hopefully we'll be back in the Friary Bar again soon-ish. We have a free book raffle happening, so if people check on our Twitter page, that's at Fiction Friary, or on our Facebook page, which is Fiction at the Friary, you'll see details there on how to enter our free book raffle. That brings us to the end of this afternoon's event. Huge thanks to featured author Cathy Sweeney for those wonderful readings and that fabulous discussion. Thank you so much, Cathy.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
And that's it's goodbye from us, I think.
Thank you very much, Cathy, from me too. And goodbye, everyone. And we'll see you again in a month's time.